everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to Abandoned in 1924, Baby Della's Shocking Identity Revealed Through DNA by DNAangels.org. Now this is a channel that I've done a couple of reactions to already. They always have a lot of really interesting stories, largely because they are doing search angel work, which means they are helping people with unknown ancestry, most especially adoptees or just people with unknown parentage, and helping them identify those biological family members. So it's a really cool thing. I used to be a search angel. Technically, I still am, although I haven't really worked a case in a minute. But this channel has been great, and so I'm going to keep reacting. Now, some of you may notice that the background is a little bit different. I'm not in my usual space. I decided to change things up a bit for recording reactions, largely because my computer hasn't been able to handle doing the reaction and the recording and all the stuff I need to do when I do a reaction. And I have an external GPU upstairs, which is like my main office, and that's where I usually stream, and so that's where I'm going to be trying to do reactions. So hopefully everything works out well. I'm really worried about the audio because the audio is going to be very different on all of this. Yeah, we're gonna see how everything works out.
In 1924, a baby girl was left on someone's front porch. She was only left with two items, a gold ring and a note that said her name was Della. I'm going to be sharing with you today in my client's story how we solved a 100-year mystery using an Ancestry DNA test. My name is Tara Crawford. I'm a volunteer search angel here at DNA Angels. Now, our client's name is Linda. She came to us with a bit of a mystery. The only thing she knew was that her mother had been found on somebody's front porch. She did not know if she was adopted out as a toddler or an infant or a brand new baby. They had no idea. The only information that they had was that she was found on someone's front porch in California.
So this is what is commonly known as a foundling. I think most people have heard that term, but I know it's a term that every once in a while I have someone who's like, wait, what does that mean? And so that's, you know, anyone that they were basically abandoned and no information was really given. I think a lot of people know about the stories of, like, I think in like firehouses or hospitals or different places, they would have a place where you could like put a baby safely and most importantly anonymously, and, you know, have the baby be safe. Because one thing with a lot of unwed mothers who give birth and don't know what to do, you know, sometimes they leave babies in unsafe places. And then of course, you know, there are some women that will just get rid of their baby any way they can. Which, when I worked as an investigative genetic genealogist, there were a couple of baby doe cases that I worked.
So what I did is I sorted groups, but this time we're not looking for birth parents. We're actually going to do a grandparent search. So I need to identify two sets of maternal great-grandparents for Linda. Lucky for her, she had some great matches. We had a great amount of second and third cousins, even some possible first cousins once removed, just great matches. The two groups sorted very nicely. There were no challenges there. I quickly was able to identify two sets of great-grandparents for Linda.
So when she's discussing sorting the matches, there's usually two main ways people go about that these days. The number one way is the leads method, which is a little bit more work to do. It was created by Dana Leeds, who's actually become a genealogy YouTuber herself, so go check out her channel. But it's basically just a method of going through your matches and trying to break them up into at least 4 groups, if not more, with the idea being that each one of those 4 groups would represent DNA cousins who are through your grandparents. So basically you get these groupings of people where you know, okay, they're going to be related through my grandparents' side. My maternal grandmother, my maternal grandfather, my paternal grandmother, my paternal grandfather. But sometimes you get much more than just the 4 groupings. Sometimes you can get 6, 7, 8, or even more. The other way is what's known as an auto cluster, or actually the newest version of that, which is rolled out on Ancestry. They call it matches by cluster, but it's the same thing as an auto cluster, just different on the back end of how they do it. But an auto cluster is kind of like an advanced version of the leads method, where it's looking at a bunch of your matches at once and then grouping them into clusters, where each cluster you should be able to find everyone in that group descends from a specific set of shared ancestors. So I don't know which way she did the groupings, but based on what she's saying, I wouldn't be surprised if she used the Leeds method. Not 100% sure if that's actually the way she did it, but just the way she was talking about it kind of made it feel like that was what she was referring to.
Now, the first set took me to a couple named Sam and Anna. They are from Salt Lake City. Deep, deep roots in Salt Lake. I mean, this family has been there since the early 1800s.
Oh, wow.
Typically, when we have families that are based out of Salt Lake, they tend to be Mormon, which is fantastic because they do have amazing family tree records. So because of the records, I was able to identify all the children of Sam and Anna. They did have 10 children, but lucky for us, only 4 of them would have been of age to have had a child or fathered a child in 1924.
Very, very interesting so far, but I do have to mention back to the Mormon thing. When it comes to the Mormon families, one of the main reasons that they're so into genealogy is the whole idea of proxy baptisms, which basically means that you can baptize people who are already deceased. So by doing genealogy, you can find the names of your ancestors and do a proxy baptism so that they can then enjoy the celestial bliss. I don't know all of the proper terminology, but that's basically the gist of things. Proxy baptisms is something that some people have had an issue with in the past. I remember there was some sort of issue that happened years ago where some Mormon members had done a proxy baptism on Anne Frank. So there was kind of issues around that. And then other people have had issues with their ancestors being proxy baptized by Mormons when, you know, they're not Mormon. So it's like, hey, what are you doing? But I can certainly understand where some people have an issue with it. All right, back to the story.
I just took notes. Our 4 candidates from this side of the family is Harold, James, Harriet, and Leroy. So we've got 4 kids. We know that one of them is probably Linda's grandparents.
It's a very good, narrow list of people.
Grandparents. Again, this family also lived in Salt Lake City. Their name was Arthur and Elizabeth. They had 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. Marge, Elizabeth, Erwin, Alan, and David.
This is great to start with, like having all of these matches, including 4 matches over 400 centimorgans, 2 matches at 300 centimorgans, and then this 91 centimorgan one, which just kind of helps solidify that yes, where the relation is through. Because sometimes if you don't have some of those more distant matches to corroborate that, there's a lot more question of what side of the family tree could the connections be through. Basically, these half-cousins at 491 centimorgans and 445 centimorgans, well, we know how they connect through their first cousins to each other. So it's the grandparents that they share that it's through, but we don't know if it's the grandfather or the grandmother. They're the grandfather. But this is the type of thing where if I was working on it, as soon as I started to find out how all these people were connected to each other, be building out their trees, looking for commonalities between both trees, as well as looking at the what are the odds tool, or what's nicknamed WATO, W-T-A-O, which helps you see where someone likely falls within a tree based on how they're matching multiple other people within that same family tree. So with this family tree, there's 4 on the grandmother's side and 3 on the grandfather's side. Granted, we wouldn't know that it's the grandmother's side or the grandfather's side at first, but by using the WATO tree, we would be able to possibly narrow that down. And I guess we'll hear how she did it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the workflow.
So these are our candidates. I don't know how I can connect them to Sam and Anna, but I'm going to try. So the first thing I did was look to see if there were any marriages between Sam and Anna's children and Arthur and Elizabeth. I did not find any. Also, did any of their children go on to live in California? At this time of the search, I couldn't find anything linking any of these children to California. They were just living right there in Salt Lake City, Utah. So what I did next is I had the names, but I figured since this was 1924 and a baby was found on someone's front porch, maybe there's going to be some headlines about this story. The newspapers would have covered it for sure. So I went
Yeah.
on to newspapers.com. I just did a search, abandoned baby. I went to the county that I knew this baby was found and typed in the year. I hit some serious gold here. There were tons and tons of newspaper articles about this baby being left on a doorstep. Many seek baby left by mother is one of the newspapers. So this baby was very popular, and I just want to read to you
Baby
how they
Vera.
described her. They described her as the little auburn-haired, pink and white mite, not yet 2 months old. So, word on the street, there's a baby abandoned. Everybody wants to adopt her. They had 60 families come forward
Wow.
to try to adopt this baby. But there was a law. There was a law in place that any abandoned baby would not be up for adoption or available to adopt until after 1 year of abandonment. So even though she's left behind and 60 families want to adopt her, that's going to go on hold. They're going to give the mother 1 year to come forward and claim her child.
Interesting.
So while we're waiting, this baby is placed in the hands of the county nurse. The county nurse, Mrs. Parker, she is her current caretaker because they actually left this baby to the county. So she became ward of the county. So the county nurse is caring for her instead of putting her in a children's home at the time. After about 4 months, they end up giving this baby Della, a home with the lawyer of the town, and they felt that she was safe with the lawyer because he would know the laws. He knew that she could not be adopted until she had been abandoned for 1 year. Now, the county and this county nurse really took this search into their hands. They want to identify this birth mother. So what they did is they put notes out to all of the surrounding cities who had a baby that was born in April with the name Della. You all need to do a birth certificate search in your towns. And they did. And they got a hit. They found that there was a baby Della born in April 1924 to a Harriet and her husband, William. Guess who delivered the baby of Harriet and William? Nurse Parker. Nurse Parker assisted in the birth of that baby. To her knowledge, this couple was legally married. And now that they had a name, the buzz began to create people having memories of their interactions with Harriet. So her nurse attendant remembered having a conversation with Harriet. Harriet wanted to go back to Salt Lake, where she was from, but her attending nurse advised against it. And the reason she advised against it is because she told her that basically the change in the severe climate and the high altitude would kill your baby. It is not safe to travel with a newborn baby. So this is 1924, right? This is something that they believed. If you go into high altitudes with a brand new baby, it will die. So Harriet left the hospital that day with her baby. Nothing had been brought up or no conversation. It's just she left with the baby. A couple weeks pass, and Harriet comes back to this town in California with an announcement. Her baby had died in Salt Lake City. So all of the stories are coming together, right? The nurse Parker was there for the delivery. The nurse attendant remembers having a conversation and advising her against travel. Harriet leaves the hospital, comes back weeks later, and says her baby died in Salt Lake. Meanwhile, there's a baby that's been found on someone's doorstep. So the pieces have been put together. The county did their job. They wrote a story. They put her name in the newspaper. So Harriet received a summons.
This is quite a crazy story. I was not expecting it to go this way, especially because it sounds like that is the case. This Harriet is the biological mother, and I guess we'll have to see with what she says about the DNA side of things, but it sounded like what she was saying DNA-wise matched that as well. The question I have is, did the family already know the full story? Because it sounds like she also uncovered a lot of this just through the newspapers. Maybe they didn't know about all this. Maybe this was kept from the baby because it was like, well, we don't want her to know. Just forget about it. So I don't know. Hopefully we'll find out.
She arrives. She comes and she's sent to some type of probation office. This is based off of the newspaper. And she arrives with a male companion that she introduces as her brother. They have conversation with her. She is asked to return to now meet with the lawyer who is caring for baby Della and the county nurse, Nurse Parker. The week goes by. Harriet does not show up for this meeting. So based off of this behavior, they knew they had found her. They found her biological mother, but she didn't return to claim her. The baby ended up being adopted by that lawyer, who then became the judge, who they say destroyed all of her adoption records. So there were no stories. The family had no idea about these newspaper articles. They had no idea that Della was her birth name. They had no idea of this.
That's quite a crazy story to uncover. And then to have the DNA backing it up too, that's wild. Because when she started telling this story, and then especially she started to get into the part about basically, yeah, we've got the mother, Harriet, we have the birth certificate that matches up with everything. And I'm just kind of thinking like, well, how did they not already know? Oh, I guess it was kept from them. But I get, that's not too crazy at that time. They really did a lot of stuff like that of like, just don't say anything, no one talk about it, skeletons in the closet. And yeah, I mean, with not just DNA testing, but just, the ability to research so easily on the internet, that's easy to uncover these sorts of stories. For a foundling sort of case, that's exactly what I would have done too. Go to the newspapers and see if there's something about it. And that's one of the best tools to use whenever you find any sort of incident that you're like, that seems like there'd be a newspaper story on that. And especially in the past, like, I don't know when it started to become unpopular for people to put all sorts of stuff in the newspapers, but for a long time, the stuff people had in newspapers were the most mundane things of like, this person came to visit their brother and they stayed and had tea. And these people went out for a nice lunch and drove around for a Sunday drive. And like, just like stuff that's like, why is that in the newspaper? But they were reporting like everything going on in town. There were literal gossip columns. And so with stuff, especially like this, where it's like, oh, wow, we find it an intriguing story today. Back then, same thing. And you find a lot of these stories. So
Harriet has left the scene, has never returned to pick up baby Della. Now, she was listed as being married to William. I built out William's tree. I found no DNA connections to his family at all. Therefore, that proves her husband, William, at the time, was not baby Della's father. They were married in 1923. I did find a record for that. However, he is not the baby's father. Since I know that Della's father must be a son to Arthur and Elizabeth, I go back and I review the DNA matches. We get very lucky because their son Erwin has a grandchild that has tested. Their son David also has a grandchild that has tested. But based on the shared amount of DNA, it is most likely that Erwin is baby Della's biological father. Now, the connection between Harriet and Erwin, I don't know, and we'll probably never know. but he was based in Salt Lake City as well. That's the only information that we could find that they have in common, is that they both were in Salt Lake City at the right time. What their personal reaction or relationship was to each other, that we'll never know.
Yeah, that's a common thing to run into with these sorts of cases, is that you figure out the answer of who's the biological mother, who's the biological father, and all of that, but then the actual story of their relationship and what the basis of that was is often lost to history. Every once in a while you can find really interesting ties that it's like, oh, that's how they met. So like, I think one of my favorite examples of that is from Finding Your Roots, the episode where they look into Andy Samberg's ancestry. His mother was adopted, and so she wanted to know who her biological parents were, and they not only figured it out, but then they also found out that they both had been part of this like art club, I think it was, at the same time. And not just that, but they found a photo of them together. So could have been a date, maybe they'd been dating for a while, might have been the only date they had, but either way, it was like there was a little bit more nuance of what was going on. But with stuff like this, it's like, was it a one night stand? Was it, some sort of, relationship that was ongoing? Was it, something worse, some essay sort of thing? Or could it be, who knows? But at the very least, it's always great when you get some answers of who was who.
So Harriet, based on a family story that I had found typed up about her online, she was married at the age of 16 for 3 years. It didn't work out. That's William, right? Her first husband. It didn't work out. She was very young. She ended up moving to Illinois, where she lived most of her life. She did become married once again, and she was married to her second husband for the rest of her life. They did have a child together who ended up passing away before Harriet, a couple years before. But Harriet lived a long 77 years, never turning back to that baby Della, never sharing the story of baby Della. So I want to ask you guys, why do you think Harriet left Della? Why didn't she come back with such a sweet baby? She cared about her. She wrote her name and left it with her when she left her on that California doorstep in the summer of 1924.
All right, well, that was a really good video, especially an amazing story to uncover. And to answer her question at the end, I'm kind of leaning towards the thought that with Harriet, it was probably a lot going on that just made it so that it was easier to just leave. So first of all, if she's married, but this child was from somebody else and she probably knew it, and who knows if her husband at the time knew it too, that's an issue unto itself. And also, why was she not in Salt Lake City to give birth? Was it because of the extramarital affair that caused this baby? And then add on the fact that she had all of this legal stuff going on behind the baby, and when she came, they were talking about, go to this lawyer and all these different people involved, and I wouldn't be surprised if she was really scared that she could end up going to jail, or who knows what could happen. And so knowing that the baby's being very well taken care of, if she knew that there were all these families that wanted to adopt a baby, and maybe she didn't even have that much money either. Who knows what her monetary status was at the time. So you add all of that up, and I wouldn't be surprised that she's just like, you know what? I love the baby. She's in good hands. Let me just leave. It's best for both of us. Because if she does take the baby and then she has all these legal issues, she doesn't have money, she's single at that time, a single mother, that's like a terrible burden. So that's my guess as to why that's probably the case. And one other thing to consider is that we don't know if Harriet ever actually tried to reach out to her baby, whether it be just to connect later in life, or, maybe just a couple years later. But I wouldn't be surprised if she had tried to make contact with the baby and the lawyer who was now the adopted father was like, no way, and just cut her out completely. So that is also a possibility. She might have tried to come back, but we don't know. But let me know below, what do you think? Do you think that Harriet left her baby for the same reasons, or maybe there was something else going on? And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more reactions just like it, be sure to check out this video of mine right here. Thank you to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members.